Good morning, everyone. Good to see you, members of the House, and welcome to the Arundel County House Delegation meeting. Today, we have many special guests and a few things we want to make sure we get accomplished today. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer by Delegate Ned Carey.
We ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and now for the prayer with about a little over 2 weeks to go. Many of you may know that I carry this coin around with me. There it is, this coin. And this coin is from Louis L. Goldstein, who was our comptroller for years. And this is the prayer that I use. This is the prayer that he wished for everybody. And it's simply, God bless you all real good. Amen.
Amen. Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Delegate Carey. So now we're going to move in. We've got some special guests here this morning. I see Senator Elfreth from District 30 and Senator Beidel from District 32, the great District 32. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a few of the other guests. I'm going to introduce them as they come up. And so I won't introduce them just yet. We have a very special presentation this morning. I'm not sure we're ready. I just need a nod from Senator Elfreth if we, I don't think we're ready for that.
I don't think we're ready.
Okay, so we're gonna hold off on that special presentation and we're gonna move right into an opportunity to have a conversation with Congressman John Sarbanes. He's here this morning. I appreciate you being here, Congressman, and you feel free to highlight anything that's going on in DC that you would like, and we'll have a short question and answer period.
Congressman Sarbanes. Thank you very much, Delegate Bartlett, and to the delegation. Appreciate the opportunity just to take a few minutes this morning and share with you some of the things we've been working on in DC and continue to work on. First off, let me thank the General Assembly in Maryland for all the terrific work. I know you're coming into the home stretch here. There's a lot of bills on either side of the State House, obviously, that need to be reconciled, but you've done amazing work. And in particular, the response to the pandemic and the economic fallout from that we've experienced across Maryland, across the country in the case of what we're trying to do at the federal level. We know this is a very, very tough time for Maryland families and families in Anne Arundel County. And I know that in addition to the legislative work that you're doing, and this has been my experience as well, you have a lot of constituent service coming at you, people feeling the burden and stress of this time, and making sure that you're responding to that in a timely way and a way that makes a difference for those families, I know puts a lot of stress on elected officials. So I want to thank you for the work you're doing across many, many fronts. I guess the most important piece of legislation that we've moved in Washington in the last few weeks is the American Rescue Plan. It's the thing we did get over the finish line and onto the president's desk for his signature. It represents a collective effort to respond to the input we've been getting from local and state officials, from constituents, from community leaders, from organizations all across the country as to what their specific needs were. And it's a big response, $1.9 trillion, that's a lot of money, no question. And that is going to be flowing out of Washington in the coming weeks and months. So let me give you a few highlights of the legislation. As I say, something that big and diverse, we can't hit all of the contents of it, but let me give you some of the highlights. And I know that you and your colleagues will be kind of processing the incoming dollars, making sure that it is getting to the people that need it the most, and strengthening the kind of connective tissue in our community that it was intended to do. So I guess right up at the top, we have significant funding for state and local governments. You may know that about $6.3 billion is coming in to the state of Maryland across all of its various components of government. So that's almost $4 billion for the state itself, another $1.1 billion for counties, another $1.1 billion for cities like Baltimore City, Annapolis, others. Arundel County stands to receive about $112 million directly. So that will certainly, hopefully, be of great assistance to the county. But we can get you more specific numbers in terms of the state and local government support. Direct payments to the state of Maryland, these are the stimulus payments, $1,400 going out to individuals that qualify. There's about 2.5 million Maryland households that will benefit from the direct payments. That totals about $6.2 billion coming in through the stimulus payments. We have expanded significantly, and I'm very proud of this, the child tax credit, made it refundable, sort of forward funding it on a monthly basis. The calculation is that this, across the country, could end up cutting childhood poverty almost by half, 45%. So it's a major step forward in terms of addressing the needs of families with children in poverty. It would actually increase benefits for about 1.1 million children in the state of Maryland. That's about 85% of the total. So the child tax credit is very important. And I think this could potentially set the stage for maintaining that kind of an approach as we move forward and out of the pandemic. It doesn't yet try to do that, but I think as a policy matter, it sets the table for those important discussions in terms of addressing poverty across our state and across the country. Earned income tax credit has been expanded. That's going to benefit about 250,000 Maryland workers. Unemployment insurance has been extended through September 6th, I believe, is the date, and there's an enhanced amount there. So there's 300,000 Marylanders that are going to benefit from that extension and enhancement of unemployment insurance. The Paycheck Protection Program, which benefits small businesses out there, has been plussed up as well. And in addition, you may know that we tried very hard in the wake of the CARES bill from last year to ensure that the kind of pipeline for delivering these small business supports, whether it was loans or grants, and a lot of the loans, as you know, were forgivable depending on the situation. But we did see in the early days of the Paycheck Protection Program that there were some larger businesses who were kind of grabbing dollars off the top of the economic food chain, if you will, and it wasn't getting to the smallest businesses out there in the community. So there was a real effort to reserve a certain number of dollars to make sure it did get to those smallest businesses. And I think we've been successful with that in the program more recently, and additional funds will now flow to help small businesses across the country, as well as nonprofits, as well as particular kinds of small businesses, restaurants and other venues of that kind, which have suffered in many respects the most during the pandemic. So that's another very important component. There's a significant amount of funding flowing in for education, for childcare. In terms of education, let me just mention some of those numbers. Almost $2 billion will be coming to K through 12 directly from the federal funding streams. 1.8 billion will be coming into Maryland school districts. 550 million almost to support higher education. $11 million to Head Start. $513 million for childcare. So these are important supports, and I could go on and on. We plussed up the subsidies for families who are trying to access affordable healthcare coverage in the exchanges across the country. Many of these things, obviously, as I describe them, you will recognize are ones that are going to require a lot of interplay and coordination with state officials, with bills that you may be passing in the General Assembly. And so to make sure that that all is being done as efficiently as possible, we're going to want to make sure our delegation, the congressional delegation, stays in close contact with the various General Assembly delegations, with the governor, with state house leaders, and so forth going forward. So look, I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. Let me move quickly to two other things. Although there's many things that we've passed in the first 6 weeks of the legislative session in Washington, I did want to touch on the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, because at the federal level, of course, we are wrestling with the need to address this situation of racial violence that we've seen across the country, which has been captured obviously in certain tragedies, but we know has been an ongoing problem. And at the federal level, we've responded with the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. I know at the state level, you're wrestling with exactly where the legislative response to what we're seeing across the country and in the state of Maryland as well, what that should be and what the proper balance is that needs to be struck. But the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act contains a number of key things, which in part were a direct response to what happened in the George Floyd case, but look more broadly at things that have happened over the last few years. Some of them that get a lot of attention, others that do not. There are many families out there grieving whose names we do not know, even as others' names have been kind of elevated and spread across the globe. So the George Floyd Justice Policing Act would ban choke holds and carotid holds. It would ban no-knock warrants. It would allow the use of deadly force only in situations where there's no other option. In other words, a last resort approach. It would significantly curb the delivery of military-style equipment out to local police jurisdictions across the country. It would significantly enhance funding and attention on community-based programs to respond across the country. It would take on the very tricky issue of qualified immunity and eliminate qualified immunity at the federal level. I know that you are struggling with all of these same issues at the state level, and I don't pretend to be an expert on what that debate has looked like, although I have been paying attention to it. I guess what's relevant here and what you must have in mind is that under the proposed federal legislation, however it eventually lands, there's going to be some connection or tie or restrictions on money that can flow out to states and local governments and police departments and so forth, based on whether it is sort of complying with the same standards that we're establishing at the federal level. So there is that tie there, and that's something to keep an eye on. Where this particular federal legislation will land ultimately in terms of what's in and what's out, not clear yet. We passed it in the House. It's gone to the Senate. It'll be subject to more debate. So we'll see where that lands, but it's obviously an important conversation. Last thing for me to touch on real quick, and then I'm happy to respond to any questions or thoughts that you may have. I've been privileged over the last few years to work to assemble a broad effort to put democracy reforms in place. The For the People Act, H.R. 1, is a bill that I was privileged to introduce in the last 2 Congresses. We passed it out of the House in the last 3 weeks. It's on its way, or it's in the Senate now as S1, so it has that primary designation in the Senate as well. And to sort of digest into a few talking points here, a 750-page bill, it would address issues of voting in the country and try to make sure that when people want to access the ballot box, they can do that without having to kind of run an obstacle course every 2 years. And we know that voters across the country of all political stripes actually really access a diverse set of voting modalities in the last election, whether it's voting by mail or early voting or voting on election day, et cetera. We want to make that process as easy, convenient, and kind of gold standard as we can, because Americans want accurate elections. Fixing partisan gerrymandering is included in there. I know there's been discussion about that state level. And then insisting on ethics and accountability among lawmakers with transparency measures, codes of ethics, et cetera. Fighting back against the foreign interference we've seen come into our elections over the last few years, and just making sure the infrastructure of our elections is strong and robust. And then lastly, pushing back on what we know is the undue influence that big money has had on our politics and the way we govern. And again, this is something that doesn't matter what kind of political audience you're standing in front of. People feel cynical that there's a kind of insider crowd calling the shots that have a lot of money to throw around in Washington. And that often blocks the kind of legislation that people want to see. So we want to address that with disclosure of where secret money comes from. We want to create a system of sort of citizen-owned elections. We want to fix the broken Federal Election Commission. A lot in there. As I say, we got it out of the House. It's in the Senate now. But I think it's very important because we are seeing a rollback in some places when it comes to access to the ballot box. We need to get the whole country to a gold standard of what it means to be able to register and vote in this country and address these other key priorities. So Delegate Bartlett, that was a little longer than I wanted it to be, but just wanted to share that. And there's obviously many other things that we're working on. Gun safety legislation, equal pay for equal work, starting to look at infrastructure is the next thing coming down the pike. So we'll stay busy there just as you're staying busy here in the state of Maryland. Appreciate the opportunity to share those thoughts.
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate you taking the time to go over those points for us. What I got out of that, members, is that our bills are too short. They need to be at least 750 pages long. No, but thank you, seriously, very excellent work. And I know it's been, I know it's an effort of many. So we appreciate working together, and we look forward to continuing to work together with our members at the federal level, because it gives us the opportunity to do the work our constituents need. So thank you for the collaborative effort. I see that we have a few questions. I'm going to start with the first hand I saw raised, and that was Delegate Michael Malone.
Thank you, Congressman Sarbanes, and thank you for your presentation this morning. In particular, I also want to thank you for looking at and addressing the issue of partisan gerrymandering within your bill and in Washington. I also want to point out to everyone that I wrote you back on March 6th, and your office within a week got a response back to me regarding some legislation that I've had here in Annapolis, which would require that our congressional districts be drawn of adjoining territory, be compact in form, and be substantially equal population, but also give due regard to natural boundaries and political subdivisions. And I thank you for getting back to me, but I didn't get a committal from you within your correspondence to whether or not you support that legislation, which has had bipartisan support here. We had about 65, both Republicans and Democrats, co-sponsored a year ago. I didn't know if you were willing to weigh in on whether or not you agreed with that language, which is the same language that's in Maryland's Constitution regarding our state legislative districts. It's exactly the same language, but ask for that language to be put before the voters and see if they think that our congressional districts should be drawn under that same language.
Yeah, well, Delegate Malone, thank you for your work in this area, and I respect it because I know that this is a top of mind issue for many voters. I'll be very candid with you because the legislation is pending, and I'm kind of putting all of my focus on what this kind of national solution can be. I've essentially reserved on sort of commenting or leaning in on state level legislation, not just your own, but there's a number of different bills in this subject area that have been introduced across the country where I've also been asked at different moments to kind of weigh in and give my view. I'm trying to channel people's interest right now back to the solution that we are proposing at the federal level, which to give people a little more insight would require every state in the country to establish an independent commission and set up objective standards for how the commission is formed, how its work is to be guided, to address some of the criteria actually that you just mentioned and others. This is based on looking at the function of some of these independent commissions across the country in places where they've been established. I've long felt that doing it on a state-by-state basis is problematic because you're not going to get every state to do it, given the politics of various states. And if some are fixing it that way and others are not, it just intensifies the politics in the remaining states. So it's very important to have a national standard on this. We're hoping that will be achieved if we can get the bill passed and get these standards in place for the next 10-year period of redistricting. If it's not successful, then I would imagine and expect that proposals like the one you've put forward and that we're seeing from other places across the country will kind of go right back to the top of the priority list in many, many states because there's a desire to see this kind of fundamental respect for the voter. So I appreciate your work. I thank you for it. And we're gonna try to solve this at the federal level. If we can't, then I'm sure that the debate, conversation, and hopefully solutions at the state level can continue forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. And I do encourage you, if it's unsuccessful in Washington, for you to reach out and encourage other people to look at the states, which is fortunately or unfortunately what the Supreme Court did in Benecet versus Lamone. But certainly I continue to encourage you for their neutral and nonpartisan addressing of redistricting. I appreciate that focus and have a good day. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Malone. Next, Delegate Mary Lehman.
Thank you, and good morning, Congressman Sarbanes. Thank you so much for your service and for being a great voice for Maryland on Capitol Hill. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
So HR 1 is, I don't remember if you mentioned this, it's the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, correct? They're one and the same?
No, so I want to make sure that distinction's clear. There are two bills that address voting rights. There's HR 1, which is the For the People Act. This would establish broad standards, many things, but in the voting arena, it would establish broad sort of baseline standards across the country in every state.
Okay.
But the HR 4 John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is specifically directed to fixing the results of the Shelby case, which struck the kind of pre-clearance formula that allows the Justice Department to come in and make sure there isn't discrimination happening with voting, particularly in the South. So they do work together, but they are separate bills.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So I guess my next question is whether you could address how one or both, it sounds like maybe it's more the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, but how one or both could sort of counter that very draconian law that was passed yesterday in Georgia? How do those two proposals interact with, because states are allowed to set, standards for elections. So, and I was seeing a lot of that on social media, like Congress in the wake of the Georgia law really needs to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
Well, actually, it is HR 1 for the people, which is the most direct response to some of the state level efforts we've seen really in the last 6 weeks. There's been more than 250 bills introduced in 43 states that would roll back voting in one form or another. Georgia is an example of that, but many, many other states across the country. And Georgia's General Assembly, took action last night, and Governor Kemp is going to sign that bill if he hasn't done it already, which would make some of those access opportunities that we saw people use in the 2020 election, make them more difficult. What the For the People Act does, HR 1, is it establishes automatic voter registration, same day and online voter registration, a minimum number of days of early voting across the country, no excuse absentee ballot voting, and then severe penalties for voter suppression, voter intimidation, voter purging, that kind of thing across the country. It is true that it only applies to federal elections. We only have authority as Congress under the Constitution to make those rules for federal elections. We have clear authority to do that. As a practical matter, states are going to need to put those same standards in place for state and local elections, because it's simply not efficient from a logistics standpoint or administration standpoint to have two completely separate systems for federal elections and state elections. So we do think that will establish broad standards across the country, a kind of baseline on what voting looks like. Still a lot of maneuvering room and discretion on states in terms of how they can meet those requirements. And there's a lot of other things that go beyond that states do. But we want to get to what I call that gold standard of what voting and registration looks like in the country. And it is HR 1 that at this stage would primarily do that.
Thank you. Keep up your great work on that. And this is an interesting conversation. I know we will all continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Lehman, and thank you for asking that question, that clarifying question. Delegate Shanika Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Congressman Sarbanes, for all the, again, great work that you're doing, and congratulations on getting the For the People Act through Congress. That's the tremendous piece of legislation. Also, thank you for the conversations we were able to have this summer surrounding race and equity and public health. I have to give a kudos to Vice Chair Pena Melnick, who has done a lot of great work with health and government operations here to address that in the state of Maryland. I wanted to touch on, you mentioned gun safety. I had 2 bills this session that would have addressed gun safety, and I don't know what the future of them is going to be, but one of the barriers to it is the NICS system, the instant background checks that we're able to do that are conducted at a federal level. It is a really great partner and a necessary component to any sort of gun safety legislation that we're going to do at a state level, and that having the capacity to be able to take on more, to being able to turn those background checks around faster so that we can get them into the hands of federally licensed firearm dealers so that we can make sure that guns don't wind up in places that they shouldn't be. I know that most of us who are on this line have stood with families in tragedy that have lost loved ones through gun violence. And so I wanted to know if what you all are looking at by way of gun safety is going to include any beefing up of the infrastructure that will really open the door for us to be able to do even more at the state and local levels.
Well, first of all, thank you for your work in many, many areas. I do appreciate the conversation we've been able to have. Absolutely, it's been a longstanding project to make sure that the national and federal infrastructure, when it comes to these kinds of checks and background checks and just basically getting some picture for law enforcement of what the situation is out there with guns, is a critical element of the conversation. So in addition to the policy response that many of us want to see to gun violence across the country, we do have to make sure that the infrastructure that allows law enforcement and others to get their arms around this epidemic of gun violence, that is in place and strong. So that, included as well are budget elements to this broad effort that we're trying to put in place. But we know that as a matter of policy, this continues to be, in my view, a much heavier lift than it should be in terms of getting some of these basic gun safety measures in place. And it's going to continue to be, I think, hotly debated and contested at the national level. This means that the work that's being done at the state level to kind of be the leading edge of what sensible gun safety measures and provisions and laws look like is even more important and critical. Maryland's been a leader in this space. You and others have been leaders in this space. The changes you're making, the sort of policy wins that you're chalking up when it comes to making our communities safer, absolutely, we have to make sure that we've got capacity and infrastructure at the federal level to be a full partner in that. So I'd love to continue that conversation with you, and we can try to identify the specific funding streams that are helping to make that infrastructure strong.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate, actually the Vice Chair Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would be remiss if I didn't, thank Congressman Sarbanes, who, oh, by the way, happens to be my congressman, for not only his legislation, but, his presence in the community. And it's great to see when those matters of equity align with policy. But, I really appreciate not only his town halls, who I've had a chance to listen in on several. And if you haven't had a chance to do that, I would encourage all the members to because listen to the town halls, but because they are very informative. But also, I remember Congressman Sarbanes along with Congressman Rupertsberger coming out to Laurel this summer for a rally that was sponsored by youth in the community. So just really appreciate your presence. He's all over the district, the congressional district. And so just appreciate you being accessible.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well said.
Go ahead.
Well said. And indeed, it is always great to see you. And I honestly believe there must be a clone or something, because you are everywhere all the time, and we appreciate it. It's very encouraging to see you. So, Congressman, we have no further questions or comments at this time. But
thanks very much,
thank you,
Delegate Bartlett. Let me just close with 30 seconds here, picking up a little bit on some of the conversation we've had. I think the challenge in the wake of the death of George Floyd and the death of so many other people across the country who've left their families grieving, and their communities and our country collectively grieving at different moments. The challenge here is to continue the conversation on that and make sure we're converting it into action. And sustaining it is not easy, because it's human nature to move on. But we have to continue to maintain this focus. And the challenge is, it's one that makes a lot of us uncomfortable, but we should be uncomfortable. If we're uncomfortable when we're talking about these issues, I think it means that we're addressing them head on, and we're ultimately making progress. So on that issue in particular, I look forward to working with you and other members of the General Assembly in the state of Maryland to make sure that in our state, we're certainly doing the right thing. And we can borrow on your leadership to make sure we're doing the right thing at the national level. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you this morning.
Thank you. So great to see you always. At this time, we would probably be clapping and, all of those things, but we're clapping in our hearts. So thank you very much for being here. We're going to move on to the agenda, through the agenda, and I've been anxiously awaiting a special presentation that we have this morning. So let's see. I know that our presentee is here, and I would love to see the special citation on the screen. This is for Mr. Rick Anthony. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your work. We miss you already. We know that you wanted to be home with family in California, and we are grateful for you having spent 11 years in Parks and Recreation as the director. So thank you very much. And we offer this citation to you. We humbly offer the citation to you. Senator Elfreth, I would like to, if you would take have a few words at this moment, please.
Of course, thank you so much, Delegate Bartlett and Rick. When we all read about your retirement in the paper this week, I know my heart was heavy. I'm so glad that you're able to spend more time with family when you go back to California, but please know that your impression on our community will not soon be forgotten, both in your official capacity as head of Parks and Rec, Rec and Parks, I always think of the TV show, of Rec and Parks, but also in our community and youth athletics, particularly in my part of the district, my part of the county, in South County. Your impact will not be forgotten. And we just wanted to present you with this digital citation, which is a new COVID thing, but you'll also receive a physical citation. We'll get it to you before you head out of town, because we want you to take with you our appreciation and deep gratitude for all that you've done for our community and our county over the last few decades. So please know that we appreciate you and we wish you the absolute best of luck in your next journey.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you so much, everyone. It's a great honor. Thank you.
Oh, you are quite welcome. And for those tuning in, I was going to read the citation, but all of what we said is there and more. Delegate Seth Howard.
Hey, Rick, I just wanted to say congratulations on your retirement and thank you for all you've done. I'm just really kind of echoing what Sarah said, but I'm going to miss you, buddy. I mean, we had a lot of 10 o'clock at night conversations and that type of stuff. And I wish you the best. And I want you to know, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. So all the best to you. And seriously, man, I'll miss you, man. You did a great job. So thanks, Rick.
Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to personally thank him as well. He's done an outstanding job. He's always been responsive. And I only have one question for you, Rick. Do we still have a tea time together out at Eisenhower before you go?
April 29th.
I'll be there.
It turned into more of my going away present. So April 29th. For those of you who are not golfing, feel free to stop by on April 30th at the same place. We're having a little happy hour around 3 o'clock at the Preserve at Eisenhower.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Delegate Ned Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rick, I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done. The people in Brooklyn Park, the people in Glen Burnie, you've made it a better place for all of us up there in North County over your years. And words just can't express how much appreciation I have for what you've done for the citizens up there. And again, we're going to miss you. Nobody more than me. So enjoy your retirement. It's well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Pam Beidle.
Thank you, Chairman. Rick, thank you so much for everything you've done for the county and for our district. We love the new Queenstown Park and the Matthewstown Park, which took years, but you brought it to fruition. So my citizens appreciate you. I appreciate you, and we wish you well.
The Vice Chair.
So, hey, Rick, I would be remiss if I didn't express gratitude, not from a legislator standpoint, but of course from that as well, but from a coach, as someone who's directly benefited working with children, all the things that you've done for Parks and Recs, particularly within the district, but obviously across the county. So I'm truly appreciative and just want to say thank you.
Delegate Saab.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just also wanted to echo the same sentiment that my colleagues have expressed, and want to thank you for your fairness. I know you had a tough job. Everybody was pulling you in their own district. for our own project, but you've done a fantastic job. And, I mean, it says a lot about your character. You've survived, multiple administrations, and it just says a lot about your character that you're just a fair, straight, available guy. And, when I read it in the paper yesterday, I was shocked. And I think we will all miss you. And best of luck on your next journey.
Indeed. Are you noticing a theme here, Rick? You will be missed.
I am. Thank you so much. A little overwhelming.
And
Well,
Madam Chair, if I could
yes.
thank Pete and the wonderful staff at Rec and Parks for helping us with the surprise this morning.
Yeah.
We've been plotting for a couple of days, Rick, to get you here under other for other reasons. So we're glad that you joined, and I'd be remiss also your leadership during this pandemic and making the really critical decision to open up the parks to our citizens at a really trying time. It was just brilliant and so appreciated. So please know that you've been a leader to your last days here in Anne Arundel County.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Elfreth. And Rick, we'll miss you. You have set a high standard to be achieved. And, we really appreciate all the work that you've done, as you can hear. And we plan to stay in touch.
Yes.
We'll have to stay in touch.
Yeah.
All righty.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you, members. I'm glad we had that opportunity to do a proper farewell and congratulations to Rick Anthony. We're going to move into our voting session now. We have Senate bills that we need to address. We're going to start with the bills that are pretty much in the same posture as they were when they left out of the House. Well, let's go one by one. We'll do it that way. So this would be based on a motion to conform these following Senate bills with the House bill. And let's start with Senate Bill 944. There was a prior vote on the House bill 15-0. Matt, would you just go over what the Senate bill, what the House bill does and in which ways we want to conform it? This would be Senate Bill 944, the Anne Arundel County Alcoholic Beverages Annual Fees. The House bill was sponsored by Delegate Chisholm. And the Senate bill is sponsored by Senator Simon-Ayer.
Good morning. The bill, as we discussed previously, allows the fees paid by licensees to be reimbursed if there is the funds available. If not, it'll be reimbursed at a percentage. And that is for the prior fiscal year. The differences between the House bill and the Senate bill is that the Senate bill makes this an emergency measure. So rather than specifying the previous year, it takes effect immediately, and it allows for these reimbursements to take place almost immediately.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions based on that explanation? Is there a motion to move favorable on Senate Bill 944?
Move favorable.
Second.
It has been moved and second to move forward favorable with Senate Bill 944. All in favor, raise your hands. All opposed? That was a unanimous vote by my recollection, and there were none opposed. Let's move on to Senate Bill 489. This bill is the alcoholic beverages class MT for movie theater license. The House bill passed 15-0, and it was sponsored by Delegate Kipke. There was a little bit of a I'm going to call it a technical error there in actually getting our amendment into the Senate. But I'm going to let our counsel, Matt, please explain what happened and what the result is, and what the result is now.
Right, there was some type of technical error. The alcohol subcommittee voted on an amendment that would allow for beer and wine to be consumed in the public viewing area. For some reason, when it was printed on the House bill, it said screening area, which is not what we voted on, and that was misprinted, I would say. The Senate bill reflects what was voted on, which is identical to the intent of the House bill that was passed. In the amendments, it will allow for beer and wine to be consumed in the public viewing area. A patron may be served only a single beer at a time and 2 servings per day. And the alcohol purchase may not be removed from the premises.
Is there a motion to move favorable on Senate Bill 489?
Move favorable.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Delegate Saab, did you intend to vote?
Yes, I raised my hand.
Okay, great. I couldn't see. Thank you.
I did it quick.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, so I saw no opposition. So we are moving with a favorable report for Senate Bill 489. Next, we have Senate Bill 566. This bill is the Anne Arundel County Transfer Tax Housing Trust Special Revenue Fund. The bill passed out as amended. This was House Bill 933. I sponsored this bill at the request of the county administration, and we passed the bill out, the House bill out 8-5. Is there a motion to conform?
Move to concur with the Senate bill.
Thank you. Thank you. In fact, yes. Hold on one second. I need to confirm with Matt. That motion was to confer with the Senate bill. Is that sufficient so that we can accept the amendments that were in the House bill?
Right, in effect, that would be adopting the amendments that we drafted previously to the House bill.
Great. I just want to make sure that was clear. And Delegate Saab.
So this is House, I'm sorry, I just got into the office. So this is House Bill 933 cross file.
Yes, this is the cross file. Yep.
We're adding the amendment of that we ended up doing after, correct?
That's correct. We're going to pass it out as it was passed in the House.
Okay, now procedural question. If we wanted to put an amendment on that, how does it work?
On the Senate bill?
Yes.
That should have been addressed before today. Because we're voting today.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is there so we have a motion to conform with the Senate, concur with the bills. Is there we have a second? All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, let me just read out. I've got Chang, Bartlett, Rogers, Pena-Melnick, Jones, Lehman, Henson, Carey, Bagnell, and Barnes. All opposed?
Is this for transfer tax? Is that what you're talking about?
That's correct. Malone, Chisholm, Howard, and Saab.
Madam Chair, are we sure this is SB 466?
Right.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, it's 566. My apologies. Thank you very much. Yes, it's 566. I will redo the vote on that one just to make sure everybody understands. It is 566. I'm sorry?
Point of order.
Yes, Delegate Malone.
I believe the original agenda provided for a vote on 466. With there being a change of 566, I think we should put this off for a week to allow a time to look for amendments, since we didn't have full notice of this bill being on the agenda for vote today.
I appreciate that point, Delegate Malone. However, the name of the bill is correct as posted. the number was incorrect, but the name of the bill is correct. So unless there's any further discussion, I'd like to call the vote again for Senate Bill 566, Anne Arundel County Transfer Tax Housing Trust Special Revenue Fund.
I move the bill.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your hand. Delegate Malone, do you wish to vote?
Against.
Okay.
I used to be that way too.
All righty. Moving on. We're going to move on now to Senate Bill 490. Senate Bill 490 is the House cross is House Bill 680. The subcommittee met with the Senate yesterday, and we had a very robust discussion and more discussion after that particular meeting. There are some changes from the House bill. Matt, would you please go through what those changes are? And that was House Bill 680 and Senate Bill 490.
So the noticeable change is that rather than a $30,000 salary, the change is to a non-represented pay schedule of NR 05.
Move to
Is there-
concur with the Senate.
Is there a second?
Madam Chairman.
It's
Is
an
there a second?
NR05.
Is there a second? Thank
Second.
you. Okay, now we're open for discussion. Delegate Saab, you were first, and then Delegate Chisholm.
I'm sorry, I just heard two different things as far as what bill are we on? Because it said something about the transfer. Like for the hotel transfer, and then it looks like we're discussing the chief inspector. So which bill are we on? Just want to make
We're
sure.
on Senate Bill 490. House Bill cross is 680.
I'm sorry, can you give me the title?
The title is, just one second here, Anne Arundel County Board of License Commissioners, Chief Inspector.
Okay, so this is where you mentioned that there was a robust conversation in the morning and thereafter, correct?
No, this exactly what I said, Delegate Saab, was that there were members of the subcommittee who met, and there was a robust discussion. You were on the call, and so was I. Then I said, and there was discussions after.
Well, how come that the subcommittee member, as myself, was not included on the afternoon sessions?
Because there is no requirement that the subcommittee has to continue to meet to discuss a bill.
No, I understand there's no requirement, but there's also a courtesy that you know that I was opposed to the bill, opposed to what this, to conform with the Senate, and there was behind closed door deals for that was made in the afternoon that changed everything. And also, not to mention that this bill was put on the voting list almost at 6 o'clock in the evening last night. Is that true?
I don't know what time it was put on the voting list. And with respect to closed door deals, some of them were, the doors were closed and some of them were done over the telephone. It is not a requirement that every change or non-change is discussed. However, I will state that there is no change that is different than what was discussed when the subcommittee met yesterday morning with respect to the bill, the language of the bills.
Right, but we had discussed, and I think specifically Senator Alfred is one that said that we will continue discussion with the subcommittee and the members later on today.
And there were several members who were discussing.
But I was excluded, and nor was I invited. I was excluded.
You were not.
I was not. Was I invited?
No, you were not.
Why not?
And because I discussed the bill with several members of the delegation, and many of those are non-subcommittee meetings. The work of the subcommittee was done. We have crossover coming. We are post crossover. We are now moving the bills. We are very soon looking at sine die. You have the option of voting against the bill. Always.
I understand,
You always have that option.
Well, I also.
You also have the option of calling me if you ever have any more discussion
Well,
you'd like to have.
Chair, I
what
call
Senator
the
Alpha
question.
says, what
I call the
Senator
question.
Alpha said, hold on, I am still talking. So what Senator Alpha said, that expect a call and continue conversation later that on. So I was expecting and waiting a call.
And when you did not
An
receive
email
a call,
at 6 o'clock, I wasn't
Senator
expecting an email
Saab.
at 6 o'clock. Hold on, I'm talking. I
I
wasn't
know,
expecting an
but when
email
you
at
did
6
not
o'clock
receive
that
a
the bill
call
is
at 6
on.
o'clock, when you did not receive a call at 6 o'clock and you saw the agenda, did you call me?
I called the vice chair, yes.
And so therefore you had the conversation and you had plenty of notice. We have a motion to move the question.
Second.
All in favor of moving the question?
I have a question.
Yes.
Please state
Madam
aye.
Chair.
Raise your hand.
I have a question.
All
real quick, Madam
opposed?
Chair.
Hold on.
All opposed to moving the question? Okay, we have 3 opposed to moving the question.
Hold on, I mean,
Four opposed.
Madam
to
Chairman,
moving
we
the
still
question.
have a discussion on the bill.
No, you cannot. The motion has
not.
been made to move the
No,
previous
we're
question. It's not debatable. Once it's been moved, the previous question is on the board.
That's
There's no
really
more
good government. Good job.
Now, I would like to, Delegate Seth Howard, you had a question.
Yeah, I just have a question on the bill, and I think it's material to the conversation at hand. The funds, so we just moved in a bill unanimously to allow for the reimbursement of licensure. And we made it an emergency bill, right? So that'll take it from next year's to this year's licenses, if I'm correctly. Is that correct?
I'm going to refer to Delegate Chisholm
Yeah.
as the bill sponsor to answer that question, please.
That is correct because.
Okay, that's fine. And so I just, the $30,000 that were invested in this bill for the commissioner, does that come out of those same funds?
Out of the license funds, license
Is
fees?
that part of that? Is that part of that same pot of money? I guess is what I'm asking.
I'm going to refer that question. If you have the answer,
Yes.
Mr. Vice Chair, and if you don't have the answer, then perhaps if there's anyone else who has that answer.
I can answer.
I do not have that answer, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Delegate Chisholm, the
Okay.
answer is yes?
Yes, so.
Okay, that materially changes the bill for me because when we just made refunding licensure emergency, which is going to materially affect the fiscal note. And I have no idea what that fiscal note impact is going to be. So that materially changes this bill for me. So I guess my question is, and we just rush through moving this thing as quickly as possible as right now, was going to be, could we verbally amend the bill? But I guess that's out of the question, to just allow the bill to take effect after the next election cycle.
You're meaning for the chief inspector pay to take
Yes.
effect after the next elections
Yes.
cycle?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate.
So basically sitting it back for 18 months. That way we're not taking $30,000 and giving it to the chief inspector. We're leaving that $30,000 intact to ensure that there's more refunds for licenses, or at least a higher percentage of refunds for those licenses until after the next election for the chief inspector. And historically, that's pretty correct because that's one of the things that when Sheriff Fredericks came in and they were talking, this delegation voted unanimously giving Sheriff Fredericks a raise. We did it after the next election.
Right, I understand that, and I appreciate that, Delegate Howard. There are some distinctions. The chief inspector is not an elected official. And further, the chief inspector has been previously a part-time position. The chief inspector is a full-time position and will be a full-time position. And currently the pay is $11,000. So I think
Right. I appreciate
what you're saying.
Yeah, I just want my objection sort of noted here, only because I think it's appropriate when we're trying to refund people licenses, or at least a percentage of the amount of those licenses, which they were not able to use in many, many cases. I think it's only appropriate. And I'm not saying, let's get rid of it and all this, that, and the other. I'm saying just put it off for 18 months. And I understand that the position was previously a part-time position and it's not an elected position, but I will disagree with you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I'll try to call you Vice Chair again. Madam Chair, that doesn't materially affect the bill. I appreciate the that he's not elected, he's appointed, but the next administration just can just reappoint him, and then the salary essentially can kick in then. I'm not opposed to the salary. I'm just opposed in which we're structuring it right now, because that $30,000 is going to come out of the same pot of money of which we are trying to reimburse businesses that desperately need this, to the point where we just passed it as an emergency bill.
Okay,
But
Delegate
that's going to
Howard,
put that percentage back.
thank you. I appreciate your comments. Matt, I need advisement, please. We have a motion to move the previous question. The motion passed, and I want to confirm that we are now with the motion to concur the Senate bill and House bill. Is that correct? And it has been seconded. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. It's harder when you can't whisper over to each other or write notes. And so now we are in that discussion phase. I have 3 individuals who have questions. Are there any other questions after the 3 hands that have been raised? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to Delegate Malone.
I raised a similar point of order that I raised before. This bill was not on the agenda as published yesterday during business hours. So I asked Matt, I thought our procedure was it had to be on the agenda to be voted on, and it was not on the agenda during business hours yesterday.
Matt, would you like to respond?
Is this directed for me? Yes. So obviously the agenda is subject to change. General rule is to provide notice in 24 hours. That is not always feasible or practicable, and it may be changed at the discretion of the chair.
Okay, well, I do want to object. I think it's poor policy not to give folks appropriate notice. Many of us have evening commitments and tied to our duties here, and to expect checking every hour on the hour and to be checking after business hours. That's the whole reason why we have a policy for it to be 24 hours in advance. And as I understand, the new agenda came out at 5:45 p.m. yesterday. Therefore, the only way to get it and to possibly have discussions for amendments to check with advocates would have been for it to be at least 24 hours in advance. So I do want to object that we're voting on this today. I think it should be held. We are still more than 2 weeks away. We could vote on it next week.
So noted. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if I heard it right, this is going to be an R05 position?
This is an NR05 position. That's correct.
NR05. What's that pay range?
$30,789 to Mr. Vice Chair. Give me the high end on that, please.
Madam Chair, I believe it's 52. I can pull that up real quick, but I do believe it's 52.
It's a large range. Who decides where the starting point is?
The board.
And is there a COLA?
No, it's mine. No, there's no COLA in the bill. This, I'll tell you, this is on Senate Bill 490, page 2, section 2, small Roman numeral 4.
And who sets the guidelines, the minimum hours? Who does you report to? Or
that would be the board.
So we're just gonna send it over kind of carte blanche to the board, and they're gonna decide, because we're taking a salary and multiplying it 5 times. I understand that there's a push for these chief inspectors, but there's just so many unanswered questions, and we're just gonna trust the board to decide the minimum hours, where the starting point is, what the training is there continuing education? This is a law enforcement officer with a lot of power.
Yes, and I understand.
Bill 8 hours before we're voting on it.
Right, I understand everything you're saying, Delegate Chisholm, and I recommend that we look for perhaps next session to have, if we want to carve any areas out in which we want, to give oversight to the board. Delegate Saab, second bite at the apple and last bite.
No, I'm going to yield my time. I just think it's, you've already made up your mind how this is going to go. I think it's bad policy, bad government to move something that was not discussed properly, or it was only selectively discussed with certain members of the delegation. This also was sent at the end of the day. So, you know, we'll just have to deal with it, but it's just disappointing.
Thank you, Delegate Saab. Your objection is noted. We
Madam
are
Chair.
going to take a secretary. We're going to ask the secretary for a roll call in just a second. The vice chair.
Madam Chair, yeah, I just wanted to, I found the information you requested. So the pay range is $30,789 to $52,319.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Seeing no other hands raised, Secretary, please call the roll on the motion to concur the Senate Bill 490 and House Bill 680.
On Senate Bill 490, House Bill to conform with House Bill 680, Vice Chair Rogers.
Yes.
Delegate Bagnall.
Yes.
Delegate Barnes.
Yes.
Delegate Carey.
Yes.
Delegate Chang.
Yes.
Delegate Chisholm.
No.
Delegate Henson.
Yes.
Delegate Howard.
No.
Delegate Jones.
Yes.
Delegate Kipke. Delegate Lehman.
Yes.
Delegate Malone.
No.
Delegate Pena-Melnick.
Yes, and in explaining my vote, I want to say that we know that there's less than 3 weeks now in session. Even in our standing committees, we cannot, although we want to give proper notice at this time in session, it's impossible most of the time to do so because things are moving fast and they have to go to standing committee, cross the other house. Sometimes they end up in conference. So this is the way the legislation, this is how the legislature works. Thank you.
Delegate Saab.
No, I also wanted to just follow up on my vice chair. I think if there's a will, there's a way. I think we still have time if we really wanted to amend it. And unfortunately, the majority party chose not to. So if there's a will, there is a way.
Chairman Bartlett.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the vote is 10-4 and the motion passes.
Thank you. I want to make just a couple of quick comments. Based on if there's a will, there's a way. If there is a bill that you do not agree with, please, in the future, put in your amendments or give me a call and we can discuss it. It is fine to utilize this time to make some discussions. However, I am not an unreachable person. And I think that if you have a problem, you should call me directly, or at least come by or see me in the hall or whatever. But I am an approachable person. I do understand that you have the right to make your comments here, but you also have the right to contact me. And I want to make sure everybody understands that you can contact me at any time. And many of you have. I'm usually available. If not, I'm available. If not that moment, I'm available later. Delegate Howard, I think your hand is raised for comment.
It was, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to make a quick question. So procedurally, had we voted to not conform to the Senate bill, what would have happened? Just, and I'm doing this little exercise just for my own and for everybody's real quick. So it would have gone to conference committee essentially, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and so just to explain my vote, the reason I voted against it, I'm not opposed to paying for this position, but the reason I voted against it was so that by not conforming to the Senate bill, it would have gone to conference committee. And my hope is that we could have amended it in conference committee to allow for the bill essentially to take place in 18 months instead of now, or in the next 6 months. So that was the reason for my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Howard. I'm going to move on to the last item in which we need to process a vote, and this is Senate Bill 529. It concurs with House Bill 93901, and this is Arundel County Hotel Tax Alterations, Distribution of Revenue. The bill is, we passed the bill out of the House 12-0 with a few members absent. I'm going to ask Matt to explain what the bill does in the way that we amended it in the House, and we want to have the Senate bill concur with what we did in the House.
With the amendments, the House, obviously, we adopted the amendment that would allow 3% of this hotel tax to be used for the city of Annapolis to be only used for housing assistance payments. The Senate also adopted a technical amendment, which requires a reporting requirement before November 1st. That is only technical so that the DLS library may keep track of this reporting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to confer with the two bills, the Senate bill and the House bill?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Delegate Saab.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Matt, can you just, I'm sorry, you went a little bit too fast. I just want to understand. So how is it different now than what we voted on initially?
The only difference is the technical amendment, which is on page 3 of the bill. It's adding November 1st for the reporting requirement, and that is strictly for keeping track, like record keeping, so that the DLS library may keep track of everything.
But the intent of the bill and the result of the bill remains the same. It's just technical.
That's correct.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I see no Delegate Chisholm.
And just to confirm it, this is the money that's going to the arts, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I see no further hands raised, either virtually or in actuality. So we're going to do a roll call. We're going to do a hand vote on this one as well. All in favor with the motion to concur the two bills, please raise your hand. I see Rogers, Bartlett, Chisholm, Lehman, Henson, Carey, Saab, Bagnell, Pena-Melnick, Malone, Howard, and Jones. Thank you. All opposed? I see none opposed. The motion carries. That is it for our voting session, but that is not it for our agenda. We're going to move briefly and quickly, and I appreciate you all for sticking around so that we can get the work done of the people. Delegate Howard, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question or point?
No, just very quickly, Madam Chair, please excuse me. I come home at night, just try to save the taxpayer because I only live like 25 miles away. So
you're excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got to drive in.
Gotcha. Okay, so moving on to, first I'd like to go to Matt Power, who's the Chief Administrative Officer for the County Executive Administration. You had a few words you'd like to, a few remarks you'd like to make before we hear from the Stadium Authority.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Very happy to be here. We just wanted to thank the delegation for their support of Lowell Racetrack and the revitalization at the racetrack. This is going to be a huge economic development opportunity for the county. I also wanted to particularly thank the Vice Chair Rogers for suggesting that we bring the Stadium Authority to the delegation for an update on the progress that we've been making and the project itself. So with that, I'll hand it over to the good folks of the Stadium Authority and let them introduce themselves.
Great, thank you, Matt. Mr. McGuigan, could you start, please?
Yes, and good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the delegation for the invitation.
We lost your video. Could you turn your video
There
on?
we go.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So my name's Gary McGuigan. I head up the capital projects division of the Stadium Authority. And we also have Al Tyler, who is a vice president of the Stadium Authority, and Chris Deremick, who is the point person, senior project manager, and will be fully hands-on with this project. Just as a little bit of background on the Stadium Authority, and I'll move quickly, Madam Chair, given the time. We were created in 1986 with an original mission to build Oriole Park and attract an NFL team. Our mission has changed vastly over the last 35 years to building convention centers. And in 2013, it changed dramatically from originally a sports and economic development agency to building schools in the city. And just last month, we'll be building schools all around the state. So just to give you an idea, we have done and have on the books $5 billion worth of projects all over the state. So we have developed a reputation of bringing projects in on budget and on time, which I believe is why the legislature gives us additional projects. So moving on to this bill, it's a very complex undertaking. It's putting money into Pimlico and Laurel, and we can issue up to $375 million in bonds. In the bill that was passed last year, we have a minimum investment of $155 million that goes into Laurel. I would imagine it'll be more than that. The minimum investment for Pimlico is $180, just to give you a sense of the proportion for both facilities. And we've been busy. To date, one of the mandates in the bill was that the Stadium Authority produce an equine health and safety research center study by February 15th of this year. And I'm pleased to say that with Chris Deremick's leadership, we were able to send that through the legislature. We've also been planning and in procurements. We engaged an architect and engineering team last month, and they're already on the job. We have a procurement for a contractor for Pimlico on the street, and we plan to go out with the procurement for the contractor for Laurel probably April, May, and engage them by the fall. With that process, we bring contractors in during design so they can give good advice and shape the design and make sure that it's cost effective. We've also been having stakeholder meetings with the city, county, Stronach, the Horsemen, working closely with Matt Power and meeting every 2 weeks, just talking about issues and making sure everyone's aware of all the things that we have going on. So next steps, with the architect and engineering team fully engaged, we'll be looking at the clubhouse to see if any of that can be salvageable for a new program at Laurel, and doing site investigations, which kind of leads me to the biggest next step. And we do have a slide, and I'm not sure if we can pop that up there. If Chris has access, if that could be turned over to him, it's a site plan, which might be useful to the delegation.
It looks like I can share. I'm going to try to share my screen if that's okay. It's disabled on my end.
Let me keep talking, Madam Chair, as we try and figure that out.
Both of you are already co-hosts, so either of you can try it now.
Great. It looks like we should be able to see the image in a second, so just let me know when you see it.
Yeah, we're good, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Great.
So one of the biggest things, both projects are really intertwined because of the vast amounts of horse operations that are at Laurel. And you can see in the middle of that screen all the barns and housing, and it's kind of like a miniature city of year-round usage, people living there, training, racing. And to renovate Laurel, there needs to be, a temporary or permanent location for those people. And, with people that advocate for the project, look at a move to maybe Pimlico while the renovations are going on. But there's one interesting thought that came up of temporarily and maybe even permanently moving them to the property on the right side of Rockbridge. And right now we have our engineering team looking to see if there's any obstacles for a temporary or permanent move over there. It's still up in the air as to which way we're going to go. We should have an initial evaluation coming back, let's say late spring of this year, to see if it's even feasible to do that. And I would like to point out, if it is feasible, the crossing of Rockbridge would be done by either a tunnel or a bridge. We don't see any impact. It's such a busy street. We have to go under or over the Rockbridge Road. So once we get that information, our plan for community engagement is to, meet with the delegation again, go to the community, get their thoughts about the overall project, get their thoughts about a potential usage of the Rockbridge site on the right, and continue with community engagement for the life of the project. We expect the design to go on for a couple of years. It's very involved. So, the next 6 months is doing the site investigation and the evaluation of the clubhouse before we even begin design, just to give you a sense of the timetable. But until we figure out this transition piece, we can't set a construction schedule for either facility because the operations are so intertwined. One other thing we do plan to do, and we kind of developed a workforce development team with our work in Baltimore City and the 30 schools that we are building there. And we have a workforce development leader, Ken Douglas, who will be working closely with the county for opportunities for jobs with the contractors that would be engaged on the site. And the last thing I'd like to state, Madam Chair, this is a highly complex project or projects. In the statute, we're not allowed to issue any bonds until multiple agreements have been negotiated, executed. And those agreements are tax agreements, it's land transfer, construction, operational agreements. And even though the housing situation is not in our budget, and I want to be clear in that, we're not going to proceed until the housing for the operational piece on site at Laurel is figured out, especially given the current conditions. So with that said, and with the limited time we have left, I'd love to open it up to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you both being here. I believe I can see my house on your presentation. Okay, can we go back to the gallery view so I can see everyone, please, staff? Thank you. Yeah, I think I could. Delegate Vice Chair Rogers, you probably could see your house from there too. We're very, very short on time now. I appreciate the presentation, and on behalf of all the members of District 32, I invite you to come out and talk with the public and have a meeting so that we can learn more about what is going on. And all members, of course, are invited to attend because it is going to collect anything we do in any district affects us all, especially when it comes to any type of development. So thank you for being here and thank you for the presentation. I'm sure there'll be questions. If not today, there'll be questions in the future. And I believe the Vice Chair has a few remarks. Just unmute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to kind of echo some of your comments and thank Matt Power for getting the folks from the Stadium Authority here today. I think this was very helpful for the legislators, but I can't stress enough, and I have been beating the drum that it's important that we have this dialogue with the folks that live there in Maryland City and Russet and Fieldstone, as well as the folks that are in Laurel, Greater Laurel, because it's going to significantly impact really a tri-county area, but most specifically, those three communities that I just mentioned. So to the extent that we can start having those conversations sooner rather than later, I think it'll be most helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Lehman.
Thank you. And just briefly, as a nearby neighbor, I concur with what Vice Chair Rogers said. I would definitely be interested in an ongoing conversation as a Laurel resident. The track and its operations affect a 3-county area. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again for being here. We'll be in touch. And that is the end of our agenda. Is there any other comment or question that needs to, or anyone needs to make or would like to make? I see none, and given that we have session, yes, the Vice Chair.
Yes, Madam Chair, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I saw a note today, this morning in reading that, and we won't meet again before then, but March 30th is designated as Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day in Maryland, but also across the country. So I would just ask that if you know of any Vietnam veterans, please take the opportunity to thank them for their service. Unlike folks that returned from World War II, the Korean War, the Gulf War, or more recent, conflicts, they never really received the thanks that they deserved. And so March 30th, this coming week, has been designated Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day. So please take the opportunity to thank those veterans that participated in that war. Thank you.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you shared that. We'll make sure that a reminder goes out next week as well, so that we'll have that, so that we make sure to do that. That's awesome. Great. Are there any other announcements? Seeing none. That was a wave goodbye, right, Delegate Lehman? Okay. All right. Seeing none, we are adjourned 9:57 a.m. Have a great day.